this guy's from Patriot Front, right? And so he totally comes off as a Fed, and Patrick Bet-David, who platformed him, says in his headline, this guy admits he's a Fed. But I watched some of this, and it's like there's a couple things actually later on in the chat that I do kind of agree with him on, and I think that's one of the reasons guys like this are being put forward in the way that they are. So listen to this right here.
Twitter, and you could say he's interesting as an entrepreneur. I'm not a businessman. I watch some of your content about the EVs, but I'm not qualified to speak on those matters. But Elon Musk, I think it's interesting in the realm of free speech and in business. Thirdly, Joe Rogan, I think he's an excellent entertainer. And in that clip, I believe if it was allowed to play a little bit longer, he does clarify he's not an authoritative source on this.
So first of all, this guy's name is Thomas Rousseau, and he supposedly represents the Patriot Front, which are those dudes in masks that do all the marches that you see on social media. So listen to some of this stuff and we'll talk about it.
How well, what are the benefits package of the feds? Like, how well do they pay you, man? Like, is there like
they don't pay me.
They don't pay you?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm not a federal agent. Okay. I am not being paid by anybody. And actually
Why do you think so many people that are trusted don't believe you?
The way that they get around this is they do this through NGOs too. So he's like, I'm not a federal agent. I just take money from this like shadowy corporate organization that's tied to the federal government.
I think it is partly astroturfed. I think because it is so convenient. Because when we do these big things,
astroturfing is doing fake protests for attention that are related to a shadowy cause. So with these people, every accusation is an admission, or every accusation is like a confession.
It is. We are presented to millions of new people because it is a spectacle when we go on march, when we have the drums and the banners and the uniforms and the masks. It is engineered to be something which is spectacular. It is very out of the ordinary.
It is engineered. Notice how he paused on that word. He's being very honest here. It is engineered. This thing is engineered.
Ordinary. And people watch it. And it's very easy for a lot of conservatives, I believe, not the ones here, but a lot of conservatives to dismiss us by saying that's not real. It's fake. You don't have to engage with these people. You don't have to engage with their ideas. You don't have to engage with the fact that the political landscape might be bigger than you previously thought. So it's an argument of convenience that they are also, a lot of people are worried about guilt by association because the left throws around words like white nationalist and neo-fascist, and I haven't called myself those things, but the left throws around these labels wantonly. And a lot of people decide, okay, well, I'm going to stay away from anybody the left labels with those things. But the thing is, these aren't real definitions. These are insults. They're labels to censor and silence people. You know, when they call you racist, when they call you a Nazi, when they call you all these things. And it's a lot easier for some people to say, hey, I'm not a racist. Those guys aren't even real. As opposed to saying, hey, you know, these are patriots. These are nationalists. They may not be like me. They may not agree with me on everything.
Yeah, but that's different, though. You're saying the left. You know, Musk had a meeting with Trump the other day.
Well, Musk wasn't using those terms exactly.
No, I know, but Musk doesn't trust you and your camp based on what he's saying. Like, hey, let's investigate these guys. Joe Rogan is a very reasonable guy.
I agree.
Guy that's and some may even from the left are sitting there saying, why would Alex Jones criticize you and say you were tied to Obama? You know, and
so that is the part that's interesting to me, and I need to read more into this. But this is kind of what Pat's calling out here is like, this guy has ties to the Obama administration, so it seems even more like an op. And like maybe even he's tied to the Charlottesville thing, so it's kind of like, wow, maybe that was an op too. Like everything is suspect at this point, you know? Like all the media shit that happened during the Obama era, it could all be like scripted by these like office of, you know, whatever, like the what's the big one, the agency, the global agency for media or whatever. There's a government agency that's like literally the propaganda arm. It's like the global media influence organization. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but you know what I'm talking about. That's the kind of government. We spend so much money on bullshit like this. It's not even hard to believe that this guy is part of one of those, you know, the NGOs that kind of like spread funding to different organizations to do this kind of shit.
And one of your founders was, you know, doing stuff with Obama campaign.
I know what he's talking about.
Tell me.
So Alex Jones is familiar with Charlottesville, and I believe what he's talking about is one of the organizers of Charlottesville, Jason Kessler, did publicly work for the Obama campaign at some point years before. But I have never worked for the Obama campaign.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. So one of the organizers of the Charlottesville protest worked for the Obama campaign at one point. Oh, that's hard to believe that's not. And it's like the way that they're going after Trump now too. It's kind of like you could totally see them manufacturing these events as ops to get at Trump. And you know, I think I think so many more of these are coming in the next like 6 months. Like God only knows what's going to pop up. But let's keep going.
And you can search for a million years. You'll never find a single statement of me ever supporting Obama. And Alex Jones said he'll release a report on that matter in a week or two. I don't think it ever.
I think if he sees this, he will react to this and say. So Jason Kessler, I just pulled it up, is an American neo-Nazi white supremacist, anti-Semitic.
I've never worked with him directly.
You've never worked with him directly?
No.
So you guys have never spoken, never done anything together, no communication?
We spoke at various times.
That guy just looks. Hold on a sec. That guy just looks like a fake white supremacist. Just look at that guy. He looks like he put on like the white nationalist MAGA costume or something. He's got like the American flag T-shirt and the hat. Like, but then look at him as a person. He doesn't look like the type of person who would run with that crowd. That's pretty funny.
No.
So you guys have never spoken, never done anything together, no communication.
We spoke at various times at Charlottesville. Off and on.
So what do you and him agree on? You and Jason Kessler?
I do not know the man personally. I don't have a list. He has changed his beliefs several times throughout his political career, to the best of my knowledge.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
Which is fine. People can do that, as we just discussed. But it is very suspect that he worked for the Obama administration or the Obama campaign and then suddenly became a, Charlottesville organizer.
An allegiance there where you guys get on?
No, there is not.
When's the last time you guys had communication?
Years.
Okay, got it. So let's set that one aside. So let's go to...
But that's where I think the Obama fact is coming from.
Okay, so again, this is the great thing about asking questions. The audience can go do their own due diligence and people can react to it. Let me continue. So your position, I'm reading some of the stuff that you've said. An African may have lived, worked, and even been classed as a citizen in America for centuries, yet he is not American, okay?
Yes.
He is, as he likely prefers to be labeled, an African in America. The same rule applies to others who are not of the founding stock of...
So I just want to say, as they go through this, immediately I was like, okay, well, the stuff this guy is saying is clearly racist, I think. But then... it's also like it's such a stage managed thing. It seems like that they want to put this guy out there and pretend that the people who believe that we should strengthen the family, or the people that like believe we should close the border or we should stop like spending all this money on foreign wars, they want to lump all those people in with a guy like this so that they can say that it's racist to feel this way. And it's like this guy's views, which he's going to go into here, are completely ridiculous on like who's an American. If you're born in America, you're an American. Like I don't give a about anything else. But anyway,
our people or do not share the common unconscious that permeates throughout our greater civilization and
I think he meant permeates there.
European diaspora. The American identity was something uniquely forged in the struggle that our ancestors waged to survive in the new continent, not simply by birth, by one granted this title, but by the degree to which he works and fulfills the potential of his birth. So what do you think, like, if you were to break down what you believe in, do you want America to be a place where it's all white nationalists and nobody else that's not a white nationalist will be here? Would that be an ideal situation for you?
Not necessarily, and I believe that might be a bit of a leading question. But when you're talking about that statement in particular, and it is from an older version of the manifesto, it has been updated and clarified. But when you look at different groups in America, blacks have been very much culturally, economically, socially, and even legally distinct from what we call white Americans, or I simply refer to as Americans, for the entire history of this country. And that,
my friend, has been structured. That's been a structured and a systematic thing. You can see it in the way that, from when slavery ended, Jim Crow and then the police state and the way that African Americans are literally, there's the 13th Amendment. You know, if you've seen the 13th Amendment, they literally say slavery is not okay unless you committed a crime. And so what do? They make everyone a fucking criminal in the hood, and then they put them in jail, and now they're doing fucking slave labor for corporations in jail. So it's the same thing. It's the new cotton industry is the prison complex.
Hundreds to the 2020s.
And yes, there are white people and Mexicans in there too. It's not just black people anymore that can be slaves.
There are groups in this country that are very distinct. And when I say American, I'm not referring to purely as a citizen, but I'm referring to a member of the American nation, which I believe is a cultural, as an ethnic group, just like Iranian, just like a member of any country from Europe. But I believe we should treat the native, true-born population of America in the same way that other countries are purely allowed to recognize that somebody from this country has a unique cultural background.
So this is a part where there are people who believe this, and I don't think that they're mainstream in any way in the Republican Party anymore. But there was a contingent. I think originally they were Democrats, but this idea that like white Europeans founded America, so like only white Europeans are real Americans, is a joke, because there were already people on the land, especially in California. California was basically snatched from Mexican families. If you've ever watched the Ken Burns' The West documentary, it's well documented. Like San Francisco was started as a mission the same year that the colonies on the East Coast were founded. So the idea that like only white Europeans are real Americans is a joke on its own. And I think most people can recognize that, especially if you were born here and raised here from an immigrant family. Like this guy argues that like only Scottish people and like British people are Americans. Like, so what? Italians aren't Americans? Spanish people from Spain who moved to the United States, people from Ireland, anyway.
And this isn't to say that blacks are not here, that they do not have a unique culture on this continent. It is simply to say that they are so distinct, both racially, economically, socially. Segregation still exists de facto today. Many communities are largely one or another population.
And that's not okay. It doesn't exist. I mean, I think it does exist to some extent, even in Los Angeles. Like, it's definitely like Inglewood and like the south central part of town is a historically black area, and they've thrived and built it up too. It's improved quite a bit. Communities in Los Angeles, and so, but I don't think they're segregated intentionally. I think it's just because of the way that ancestral fucking things work. Like East LA is like the real LA. That's where there's generational families that own homes. South Central LA, same thing. There's people there that own homes, and it's just been passed down through generations, and they happen to be black families. But there's a lot of there's white people and Hispanic people and Asian people in all parts of the city. And so it's like, yeah, I guess there are neighborhoods, like to his point on the segregation thing, it does still exist to some extent, but it's not like an intentional thing. And it's not the letter of the law, like people like that see the world his way want it to be.
I believe these differences are so distinct that we ought to consider them as different nations, perhaps within the same government.
Okay, so what does that really mean? Going back to my question.
Sure.
I'm from Iran.
Okay.
Okay. My mother's Armenian. My dad's Assyrian. I came here in November 20, 1990. June 20th of 1999, I become a U.S. citizen. I joined the Army with a green card. Okay. What do you consider me? Do you see me as an American, or do you see me?
So this guy put his life on the line. I mean, maybe it was at peacetime, I don't know, for the United States. And I mean, to me, that on its own is worthy of citizenship.
Iranian.
I would think you would be...
Because I wouldn't do that.
You are a citizen. You are legally and civically a part of the United States, and I would classify you as a good citizen. You are a businessman. You have brought a lot of value to the country. However, I would say that you are distinct from an American, and I am not somebody who believes that everybody who is not American is by default worse than. Mm-hmm. I don't put the world into that kind of hierarchy. but I believe there is a distinction there. And when you're talking about, what I would want to do, I think immigration should be restricted. I think all of the illegals should be sent home. I think anybody who lied about their naturalization status in order to get it unlawfully should be sent home. Like Tucker Carlson, you spoke with him recently. He mentioned how everybody with a dual passport should have to choose. Things like that are a great start, and I think you would really be able to help demographically secure the country. But are we asking, should the United States have anybody within its borders in any civic capacity, which is not a national, which is not a true cultural, assimilated person? I think there is some room for that, and I think there's some room for that in a lot of reasonable governments. But what we're talking about today, or what we're talking about in the country today, is the fact that should these globalist policies be allowed to completely transform the cultural and demographic landscape of the country? And I believe that would make it something entirely different.
So there is some validity to these points, and you see it with real estate, where it's like I kind of agree with people that it's like, you look at it, like I've talked about this before, but my cousins tried to buy real estate in Germany. My cousin's husband is a German citizen, dual citizen, fought in the army in the United States, probably similar to Patrick, but David. But if he had to choose, if they were like, you have to choose between being an American or a German, he's an American, you know what I mean? But he happens to have been born in Germany. And he's a white guy too. So if they're by this guy's, take, he'd be fine. But if it was a black guy who was born in, Burma or something, or Jamaica, and he came over here and fought in the war, that's not okay. He's not a real American. And that's bullshit. That's complete bullshit. But by the same token, there is validity to the idea that, hey, you have to kind of like establish yourself as a citizen if you want a piece of this, where we don't have that now. We kind of let people come in from other countries and just buy up the land and take advantage of our openness. And I do think we need to be a little more careful about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact that this guy is kind of like an op or like a Fed, it almost is like, it seems like it's designed, this guy and people like him in the public sphere are designed to make people think that anyone who believes that like we should reform immigration or we should be a little more careful about who we let buy land is a full-on racist who just doesn't want anyone who's not white here. And that's totally not the case.
So my sons, their mother is white. Their mother's white. She was born in Texas, Houston, Texas.
And listen to this. This is ridiculous with this guy.
Their dad is Middle Eastern. What are my kids? Are they American?
I would say
Of course.
they are half and half.
They're American. They're born in America. Like, that's the American dream. If they were born in the United States, one of their parents is American. This guy valiantly fought for the country. He's an established businessman. He's done everything he needs to do to be a good citizen. What do you want? He's American.
So if they're not born here to you, they're not.
There's a clear distinction between, I think what people who have like real concerns about immigration and kind of like the selling out of America versus like actual racists like this douchebag.
If they're not, so what do I have to be fully American in your eyes?
Like I said, I do believe that like people like this are put into the public sphere to, mold the American mind into thinking that anyone who has these kind of concerns is a racist.
You personally?
Anybody.
So an American, I believe, is a member of the European race, any of the nations of the European race. And they not only, you aren't American.
First of all, European is not a race. Second of all, that's just so ridiculous. It's like, that's the dumbest thing ever.
American simply by being a member of the European race. You have to have lived in America and assimilated to the American culture, the American
That part of it is understandable, and immigrants do have to do that. Naturalized immigrants have to do that.
heritage, which is harder to do nowadays because our culture has been so diluted. Things have been made much less sincere, I believe, when we look back.
What is our culture? I mean, that's what I would like. I would like people to define what is our culture, because to me, our culture is freedom of expression, freedom of exchange of ideas, freedom of religion, freedom of everything, freedom to marry who you want, freedom of sexuality. And I think a lot of libertarian types would agree with me on that, but this guy is not legit.
Back at our history. So somebody not only a member of the European people, but also specifically a member of the who has assimilated to the American nation, just like anybody might assimilate.
Got it. So have you done ancestry on your family?
Yes.
And what
aware.
showed up? What came up for you?
I have ancestors from both my mother's and my father's side that go back to the 1700s before the Revolution.
And where did they come from?
Scotland, Britain, and I have some French and German ancestry as well.
The guy's last name is Rousseau, which is a French name. So that's interesting because by his accounts, he should be in Canada.
Was it 100% Scotland, Britain? And was there anything
No,
from the
no.
Middle East at all?
No, not that I know of. No.
0% from anything
Not that he
else.
knows it. Now, here's an area, and this is again why I think people like this are an op. This is an area that I think a lot of people on the left will agree with this guy. And again, this is why I keep saying this, and I'm going to say it again. I think these people are put in the public sphere to make anyone think people who agree with these viewpoints is a f***ing racist. And listen to this, and you'll understand why I feel that way.
You don't think America exists to ensure these places. So,
Yes.
Got it. So for you, whether they destroy Jerusalem or not, that's not in your top 100 list that matter to you.
I would say that I would think it would be a very bad thing. However,
You wouldn't lose sleep over it, though.
the United States, if we're talking about what we would do, I'm not in any position to write policy or dictate foreign policy, right? But the United States could act not as a arms dealer, but it could act in a more assertive tone as a peace broker. And I think that could
That's racist. See what I'm saying? That right there is why this guy's put in the public
avoid the
sphere.
type of cataclysmic scenario you're talking about.
What prompted
Because that's correct. He has the correct viewpoint here.
you to be so uncomfortable or maybe against Israel's existence, or the fact that's like, I think Trump being too supportive of that, I'm not with that. What prompted you at this age, 25 years old, to be so against that?
It's not
This guy's 25 years old.
so much Israel in the Middle East as much as it is Israel in the United States. I think the amount of people of Jewish faith and ancestry,
Yeah.
and specifically of Zionist political leanings, is they're overrepresented in positions of power in the United States today. And is that me saying that every single one of them is morally bad and guilty of some particular wrongdoing? No, absolutely not. But I think it is not wrong to say that these people, especially Zionists, people with these lobbying groups, are so vastly overrepresented in comparison to the amount of Jews in the Middle East or in the United States or anywhere, that we need to ask some serious questions as a country as to whether or not the influence of these, political careerists is in the best or the negative interests of the United States. And if you ask me, I would say no.
I think that's a very
That he's right about that. He's totally right. And I think a lot of people on the left will agree with him. A lot of people on the right will agree with him. But he's correct about that. And again, his other views are completely disgusting and wrong. And I would not support any of his views on that. But this is something that people can kind of find common ground on. The fact that, hey, if you really care about our country, the United States, where we live, where we are, you would want to rethink some of this stuff. And you might have to work with people who have disgusting viewpoints like this guy to make that happen.
Yeah, no, I don't think people would dispute that. I don't think that's the concern. There's a lot of people that are probably going to be on the same page with you there on
There you
whether
go.
America's
so.
first or not. It's not about I hope so. I think that's what the case is, because we would want it to be America first, and some of them are simply not. They're giving too much money to Ukraine, too much money to a lot of different places. Those are all valid concerns to
Yes.
have. I think for you, okay, so at the beginning.
So this is another point here that just blew my mind. Like,
There's an
I don't understand how anyone in this day and age can think like this. This is complete. But listen to what he says.
Ultimately, I got caught up in Charlottesville as somebody who wasn't super familiar with a lot of the things going on, and I found out a lot of what I didn't like. But I also found out that there's something in patriotism, there's something in nationalism that's worth having. It's just it wasn't there at the moment.
Would you ever marry a black woman?
No.
Okay. Middle Eastern?
No.
Armenian, Assyrian?
I want my children to look like me.
So just that worldview on its own is just completely foreign to me.
Okay. So got it. You want your children to
I think that's a very understandable opinion.
Also, it's kind of like inbreeding. Like you want your children to look like you. Like the more it happens in the animal world. Dogs that are like purebred are inbred, stupid, slow dogs. and mutts are actually much smarter, better animals because they're intermingled with different breeds and stuff. So the human race and genetics in general is against this guy. But let's keep going.
I don't.
A lot of
There's
people
people
will
that
share it,
there's a guy that goes viral all the time, and he wants blacks to only marry blacks. I don't have a problem with that. I got a manek yesterday from somebody whose parents are Armenian, and she is dating a black guy, and her parents want her to marry an Armenian guy. And I can understand that. I don't have a problem with that. But going back to it,
Yes.
you would be more white first, not America first.
Well,
There's a big difference.
Americans
Yes.
are one of
Yeah.
the sovereign nations of the European race. Just like somebody who believes
No.
that Iranians should only marry Iranians. Would you say that he is Arab first?
What big
There
narrative-
is nowhere in the Constitution that it says for Europeans only. Sorry.
today in America agrees with you?
I would say that there are people who have individual opinions. If I'm going to point to somebody who believes everything I believe,
No,
about
just the
America,
specific thing about to say, I'm not comfortable with a Candace Owens being a president. I'm not okay with a Tim Scott being a vice president. I'm not okay.
you put them on the ballot and you'll find out how
It's
many.
not
people
about
believe
finding.
that.
Oh, are you kidding me? Like we learned how many people did that when Obama won in
understand what you're
08.
saying.
Yeah. But
I remember back when Obama was running, my conservative friends kept saying, "Oh, no one's going to vote for a black guy, dude. People say they will in polls, but like once they get in the voting booth, they won't do it." And they clearly were wrong about that.
incredible benefits. I owe to America. I don't think America owes me anything.
Okay.
Nothing. I came here and I had 195 other options. Why did we choose America? Then, we could have gone to Africa. We could have gone to Russia. We could have gone to, at the time, Yugoslavia. We could have gone to, why did we come here? We owe America. This is why I served in the military. But I think
Absolutely.
the difference between you and Tucker, you've quoted a lot of people.
Yes.
You've quoted Tucker. You've
Yes.
quoted Ann Coulter.
Sure.
You've
See, again, I love that Pat breaks this down because this to me is just more proof that a guy like this is an agent in the media to kind of like tie people like Joe Rogan and Tucker to his way of thinking. When it's like, yeah, does make some good points about American sovereignty and our ability to kind of like stay, our own country despite how open we are, but he's way different than these people. Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, they don't see the world the way this guy does. And you watch liberals and the mainstream press lump Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan into the same pool as people like this guy. And they're just not. They're not the same people by any stretch. They're not even close to the same. Joe Rogan is like the most open-minded, curious, liberal-minded dude when you actually listen to him talk. And this guy is definitely not that.
quoted Candace Owens. Ann Coulter dated Dinesh D'Souza. Okay?
Sure, that's her decision.
Candace Owens, I think she's black.
I'm pretty sure she is.
And Tucker Carlson gets along with practically anybody, and it's not something.
I would like to think I'm getting along with you.
I don't think it's about.
Tucker Carlson's one of the few people who showcase the Uhuru people and Amalia Shatelli when they were unfairly attacked by the government. Tucker Carlson's actually consistent with his views, despite people's race or political affiliations, which is very rare in this day and age.
But along the differences, like I don't think a Tucker would want somebody to become a president based on their skin color and being white first. I think Tucker would want somebody to become president.
Race is not purely skin color. Race is a broader aspect of the human experience.
I get that, but I mean,
Tucker has had Ice Cube. Tucker has had Vivek. I mean, Tucker's clearly not in the same realm as this douchebag.
listen, Candace Owens is as American as apple pie, and Candace Owens is black.
She
And
is black.
You would be uncomfortable with her being a president. I ask you if you would ever marry somebody. No. Okay, cool. There's the fact that you're uncomfortable to say white first. You shouldn't be. You should be comfortable with it.
America is a nation which is a part of
Yeah.
what you see as the white race.
Yeah.
And I want
No,
to.
it's not.
I don't mind. I married a white girl.
not. There's nothing in our founding documents that say anything specifically about the white race or Europeans or anything. It talks about mankind.
From here. I think
And
she
and regardless of how much people, Washington owned slaves. He did. They the founding fathers were flawed people. They definitely, but the framework that they built was a solid one. I think when you really look at it, it was designed for all people. And eventually the slavery thing it's been a rocky road. I'm not going to lie, but we had a black president. I mean, we're moving in the right direction. I think the public is far, far away from anyone. This guy, any of these guys, this guy's views. These, like Pat said, this guy's a shrinking minority.
The ancestry, and I think she's British. So I married a white girl that you would support of. Where she's from. But to me,
I don't support somebody automatically because they are a member of my nation. I support people because of matters of their character and matters of their deeds.
Not what it sounds like, though. It's not what it sounds like.
It absolutely is.
It's not what it sounds like.
I think we should be able to have a country, if the immigration policy that you're talking about, where it's largely restricted to merit, you would believe it should be a meritocracy.
Yeah.
And people who have something to bring to the country should be let in.
Right.
If that was in practice for the last 100 years, do you think the country would be whiter or less white?
Less white, absolutely.
100 years ago, going back to 1924.
Sure.
If that would have been practice, would it be whiter? I don't know.
So we're only letting in people who could do something that you did.
Yeah, I probably, if you allowed it based on what they did, I don't know, because the educational system in Japan is incredible.
Okay.
I think when I came to America from Iran,
I mean, this guy would probably try to argue that our decline in recent years is based on immigration, and it's so not. It's so based on us allowing people who are known liars to continue lying and doing the things they're doing. The people that ran the Bush administration, who everyone viewed as completely corrupt and contemptible, now run the Biden administration. I just showed you video of Victoria Jabba the Hutt Newland, talking about how we need to strike Russia. And it's like, this guy's just completely delusional. I guess the point I was making is that the decline of the United States, to finish, is not based on anything related to immigration. It's based on corruption and just a continuing, ability to look the other way despite the bullshit that we keep going through. The COVID thing is such a great example of that. It's like Americans are just rubes who will put it on our TV. It's true. You can rob us this way, rape us and rob us 6 ways till Sunday, to quote Chuck Schumer.
Okay.
I was shell-shocked of how pathetic the math was in America at 7th grade. I laughed at Americans. And so, go look at how many Persians, Iranians, job creators, what they do. Are you kidding me? They're all over the place when it comes down to business.
And Pat's my age, so when he was in 7th grade was a long time ago. It wasn't 5 years ago or something. This was probably in the 90s or the early 2000s.
So bring Japanese, bring Indians. The highest paid.
Yes.
Indians in America. Can you pull up, Rob, which immigrants in America make more money than actual whites? This is
Vivek is a good example.
Actually, the direction you went. Wait a minute. Let me just show this to you.
Please. Okay.
So if you can pull this up, Rob, where it shows there's a statistic, income inequality. If you can't find it, Rob, I'll find it. It shows which ethnic immigrants make the most money, and whites are at $65,000. Indians are at $129,000. So do I think America would be better if they attracted more Indians? They kick white people's ass. I mean, if that's the part. And I'm not even Indian.
There's no reason that I believe all these, in what you're talking about, is more of the immigration that's coming from the visa programs and not necessarily the southern border.
Well, I'm not for illegal immigration. I'm not sitting here saying we do illegal immigration. That's not where I'm coming from. But
he's just countering your argument that whites are in some way superior for some reason, which they're not. Yes, white Europeans were the founded the current structure of things here in the United States, but they also took a lot. It's just historically ridiculous. And just to close this out, I mean, Pat pretty adequately took this guy down on his intellectual arguments, but very few people see the world the way this guy does in 2024. I have children that race isn't even a thing that they even think about. It's just, my daughter and my son both have friends across the spectrum, And it's not even like, I mean, they might make jokes about it among each other because that's what they do, because of the environment that they grew up in with the internet and everything. But there is very little to zero racism, like real quantifiable racism in my children's generation. And I think that that's only gonna, as we kind of like intermingle as a species and, you know, the world becomes smaller through communication, that's only going to continue. So this guy seems like an absolute op. And he's completely wrong about his views on race, but he's right about the America First stuff. And I think, again, to say this for the 1000th time, that's why he's being put out in the public sphere, to represent those types of views so that people will tie other people with views that are similar in some areas, like Tucker and Joe Rogan, to that racist way of thinking.